Welcome to this special webinar. My name is Dr. Stephen Sussman. I am a professor of public administration in the Andreas School of Business and Public Administration at Barry University in Miami, Florida, and co-founder of the Palm Beach Center for Democracy and Policy Research. And I'm adding people as I go along here, so bear with me. Dr. Luis Fleischman and I, along with a team of dedicated colleagues, established the center as an outlet for the marketplace of ideas. The Palm Beach Center for Democracy and Policy Research is a nonpartisan public policy organization. They're coming in like crazy, so you have to bear with me. A research center and a think tank. We are a gathering of scholars, experts, and community stakeholders engaged in research and dialogue in an effort to create practical policy recommendations to current local, national, and international challenges. Our core values of diversity, balance, and community define us and set us apart from other organizations. As an organization, we value As an organization, we value diverse voices and views and see it as a means to create a healthy debate. The center provides a balanced platform where civilized communication, exchange of ideas, and inclusion prevail over party politics and dogmatic views. Our objective is to be a community and place of gathering for academics, professionals, elected officials, decision makers, civil society groups, and leaders. So please visit our website at palmbeachdemocracy.org. On the site, you'll find links to our past webinars and links to the many articles we've published over the years. On our website, you'll find a donation button. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. Through your generous donations, we were able to bring you important and timely programs and articles. On October 7th, Hamas, in the most gruesome way, murdered Israeli babies, teens, and entire families, and the elderly. The brutality of the attack should shock the conscience. Tonight, the Palm Beach Center for Democracy and Policy Research is hosting Dr. Josef Olmert. Professor Olmert will talk about the Hamas attack, its causes and implications. Dr. Luis Fleischman will serve as moderator. Dr. Fleischman, of course, is co-founder of the Palm Beach Center for Democracy and Policy Research, and is a professor of sociology at Palm Beach State College. His most recent book is The Middle East Riddle, a study of the Middle East peace process and Israeli-Arab relations. As such, he is well positioned to serve as moderator. Luis will introduce Professor Olmert. As you will soon learn, Professor Olmert's background places him as a renowned authority on Israel and its security. We are proud to have him as a senior fellow at the Palm Beach Center for Democracy and Policy Research. We welcome your questions. You can write your questions in the chat box, or when we are ready for questions, you can raise your hand virtually or otherwise. I now turn it over to Professor Fleischman. Luis, you are up.
Hi, good evening. The first thing I want to say is that the first time I met our speaker, Josef Olmert, was not a face-to-face meeting, but I remember being then a young soldier in Israel during the first Lebanon war, and there was a new program that actually lasted for several decades called Erev Hadash, the new evening. And the very first speaker, the very first guest in that program that was then directed by a well-known journalist, Dan Margalit, the first guest of that program that lasted 3 decades at least was Josef Olmert. And of course, Josef Olmert was known because his brother was a member of the Knesset, of the parliament. And then he was a young scholar, I think just came from the London School of Economics. But let me give you a broader biography of Dr. Olmert. Dr. Josef Olmert is a top Middle East scholar, former peace negotiator, and a much-published author and journalist. He's currently an adjunct professor at the University of South Carolina. He was the director of the government press office and advisor to former Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir during the First Gulf War and the International Peace Conference in Madrid. He helped secure press relations for Israel with the Soviet Union and China as well. He has deep experience with the media, and I remember him. I remember him even in the First Gulf War, watching CNN, and I remember seeing Josef Olmert almost every night while Saddam Hussein missiles actually were bombing Tel Aviv. He actually was a regular columnist for the Huffington Post and still writes regularly in the Times of Israel, Your Middle East, Fair Observer, Newsmax, and other outlets. Then later, Dr. Olmert was a policy advisor to former Defense Minister Moshe Arens, and in that capacity, he participated in official talks with the then Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, and Defense Secretary William Cohen, all under the presidency of the administration of the Clinton administration. Dr. Olmert was also very active in public campaigns to promote and enhance understanding between Arab and Jewish citizens of the State of Israel. As I mentioned previously, he holds a Ph.D. from the prestigious London School of Economics in Middle East Studies. He headed the Syria and Lebanon desks at Tel Aviv University Moshe Dayan Center, who is also very prestigious, and even now we continue to read what they write. He's the author of 4 books, as well as numerous academic articles. He taught at several prestigious universities, including Cornell University, York University in Canada, and American University. He lives in South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, with his wife, Diana. He's the father of 3 daughters. 2 live in Israel, and 1 is currently living in the United States. Dr. Olmert actually will make some remarks, will make a presentation about these dramatic events that Israel has experienced in the last 9 days, 10 days. And then I will ask a couple of questions, and then I will open it to a Q&A to the public. You can raise your hand, or you can speak up, or you can speak through the chat. Better if you speak up, frankly, to make it a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more interesting. So without further ado, Yossi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for this very short introduction. And I'm so happy to see some old friends, Rose Greenspan and Stella, and of course, Jane, Steve, and you, Louis, and others. So thank you very much for inviting me. And I really want to present to you very, very briefly. What I'm going to do is to take you through the Gaza story from the beginning of it to now, stage by stage, according to main topics. Each topic will be very brief but concrete. Then we'll move on to the current situation and what could happen or what will happen, at least the way I think it. Let's start with a day in the War of Independence, 1st of October, 1948. The Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, the notorious collaborator with the Nazis, declared in Gaza the establishment of the government of all Palestine. Nobody should have stopped the Palestinian state to emerge with Gaza as its capital, but it was their Arab brothers, the Egyptians. They refused to accept it. They threw him out. Gaza became part of Egypt. 1956, you may remember, was taken over by the Israelis after being the base of terrorism and aggression, was given back to the Gazans, the Egyptians, because of the intervention of then President Eisenhower. That's the first time that the Israelis gave up on Gaza. 1967, We took Gaza again in the War of Self-Defense, the 6 Days War, give them back in 1994 after the Oslo agreements. But at that time, there still were some Jewish communities that were allowed to stay around Gaza. All this was also dissolved in 2005 with the disengagement with Gaza, which left not even one Jewish person in Gaza, not even any semblance of something called occupation. By the way, at that time, 2005, the president of the World Bank, an Australian Jew by the name of Jim Wolfensohn, I believe that he is already dead. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but I think that's the case. At 2005, he said to the Israeli government, look, now that you decided to leave Gaza, maybe this withdrawal will really become the basis of peace. So his suggestion was there were greenhouses, establishment by the Jewish agricultural communities in Gaza, around Gaza. Give them to the Palestinians, we'll pay you, that time they talked about $14 million, and that will be a basis for their economy. The Israelis said, sure, of course. You know what happened? Hamas burned it and destroyed it because they don't like Zionist lettuce. They used to export lettuce mainly from this area to Europe. Then Hamas came to power in Gaza and took over and declared jihad against Israel. The Israeli response was not full-fledged siege. It's one of the biggest failures of Israeli PR that the world was under the impression there is a complete, total Israeli siege. No. The siege was to prevent the coming to Gaza of war materials, arms, and so on for Hamas, which apparently it failed. You know what happened? Foods, medical supplies, construction supplies were all allowed by the Israelis. Every week, they published the number of convoys and trucks that went from Israel to Gaza to supply the Gazans. But everybody was under the impression it's a siege, complete siege. And needless to tell to audience like yours, that no normal country in the world, when a neighbor declares war on them, would make it easier for the neighbor to attack them. The idea was that even if Hamas is in control of Gaza, they will still behave in a way that will be normative or at least moderate because they would like to do good to their people. That proved, of course, to be wrong. I'll come to that in a minute. But a quick comment also about the central theme in the propaganda against Israel about Gaza, the question of ethnic cleansing and genocide. In 1967, the number of people in Gaza was 350,000. Today, 2.1 million. Genocide, ethnic cleansing, of course, nonsense. By the way, in Jerusalem, in 1948, were 44,000 Arabs. Today, there are 300,000. And when there is a civil dispute with 4 families in a neighborhood called Sheikh Jarrah or Shimon HaTzadik, it is becoming the ethnic cleansing of Jerusalem. So that we get a sense of what really is happening. Hamas is an organization that was established in 1987 with the distinct aim to destroy the state of Israel. To start with, this was a genocidal organization. Why? Because if you say, I want to prevent a state from existing, and obviously this state doesn't want to disappear peacefully, it means that you can destroy them only through a genocide. That's as simple as that. Hamas declared itself to be an Islamic organization, not a Palestinian nationalist one, in line with the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood movement that emerged in Egypt and became popular in the Arab world as a pan-Islamic movement. And basically, Hamas are the Islamic branch, the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood movement. That's formal. That's what they say about themselves. Now, why do I mention that? Because part of the propaganda, and even one that I've been confronting in the last 48 hours in interviews I give and all that, people say to me, but you, Israelis, you established Hamas because you wanted to create a counterweight to the PLO. Absolute utter nonsense. And I said to this the following: do you really think that the Palestinians need us to convert them to Islam? In 1987, there was a mushrooming emergence of many Islamic movements in the Muslim world. Why? Because of the war in Afghanistan, the jihad against the Soviets. The ideologue of Al-Qaeda, by the way, was a Palestinian from Jenin, a guy called Abdallah Azzam. They don't need us to tell them what Islam is all about. It's even patronizing and racist attitude to say the Palestinians are idiots, they're ignorant, they need Israel to establish an Islamic group for them. So let's put aside this argument as well. Look, this is what the propaganda is focused on, and we need to understand it. I'll come back to that from another angle shortly. As of 2009, and I have to say it, there is Hamas in Gaza, and there is an Israeli government that, short of 1+ year, when Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid were prime ministers, was ruled by the Likud party and led by Netanyahu. The main strategy that Netanyahu applied to Gaza was composed of the element of what they call containment, or in Hebrew, achala, containment, based on the following principles. Hamas is not the main enemy of Israel. The main enemy of Israel is Iran. Israel needs to preserve its energies, its resources, to the big battle that is bound to happen with Iran over the nuclear program. Therefore, we need to contain Hamas, not to come to a real full confrontation with them in order not to waste our energies and resources. And because we are adopting a more moderate, softer approach towards Hamas, they will reward us by live and let live. That was the strategy. And let's face it. So whenever it proved wrong, and there was a round of hostilities between Israel and Hamas, and quite a few of them since 2009, Israel never used against Hamas more than 2, maybe 3% of its military potential. And each time, when the Hamas or the other splinter groups were begging for ceasefire, we immediately agreed so that they could show that they want a ceasefire. And there has never been any decision. And at the same time, Hamas was growing. They basically built an army of about 35,000, 40,000 soldiers, well equipped. This siege failed, whatever it was. Tell you something about it. 2014 or 15, somebody called Peter Beinart, you might have heard about him. This renegade Jew that was a Zionist and became anti-Israel, anti-Zionist. He wrote a stupid piece in 2014 saying, here is my complaint about the American Jewish establishment. They swallow all this Israeli propaganda about Gaza. Israel didn't leave Gaza. Israel is in control of Gaza. That's the truth. So I wrote a couple of articles mocking him in the Times of Israel where I said, look, apparently the Israelis are terrible occupiers. They sit in Gaza. From there, they get 20,000 rockets by then from Gaza. So stupid occupiers. How can it be? But a lot of the propaganda about Gaza was so stupid, was so unreal. Just think about it. jump to what happened. And why the timing? I'll surprise you with at least one of my theories. First of all, on the 7th of October, we had a colossal intelligence failure. Now, one of the courses I give in the university is about the role of intelligence in national security. Based on my experiences with intelligence, let's not get into that. And there are two classic mistakes that happen which lead to the disaster that we encountered or faced on the 7th of October. One is the word hubris. We know everything. We have the best intelligence. We have the best technological tools, devices connected with intelligence. We know. We know. That leads to the same problem, to the second problem, I'm sorry. It's called concept. You come to a concept. And the concept is Hamas has enough of goodies in Gaza not to endanger it in a war against Israel. So there can't be a real war. Once you adopt a concept like that on the basis of hubris, you do not change it. Yet exactly what happened in the early days of October 1973 or the last days of September. The same mistake. By the way, until today, head of the IDF, General Levy, said, I accept responsibility. In so many words. Judge me after the war. Right now, we fight to win. Head of military intelligence just today said, I take responsibility. Right now, we fight to win. Judge me after the war. The head of the General Security Service said, I take responsibility, and all the rest of it. Mossad, by the way, has never been involved with Gaza. So everybody says, where was Mossad? Mossad doesn't deal with Gaza. It's the GSS, the General Security Service. So we have to understand, also the way the Israelis were handling all that. So this is the combination that led to the disaster of the 7th of October, but there is a bigger problem behind all that. A bigger problem, which is the basis of every course I give about the Middle East to my students. It's the cultural debate, disengagement, misunderstanding between us as Western people, Western-minded people, and them. We think that what is important to us, what seems to us to be the obvious, for example, human lives, the value of human lives, is shared by the other side. No, it's not. But we don't like to admit it because it requires us to change the disk in our mind. We don't like to do that. Sadat, go back to him. 1972, he said, I will be sacrificing 1 million Egyptian soldiers in order to liberate Sinai and the Suez Canal. Everybody in Israel said he's crazy. Arabic, Majnun, crazy. Who talks like this? You know who talks like this? Those who believe in it. You know who don't believe that this is real, that this is true, that this is realistic? Those who do not want to believe in it. Hamas said, our goal is to destroy Israel. We are anti-Jews. We don't hide it. We don't hide it. No. Timing. Saudi Arabia, you ask me about it later, part of it. Sure. The mayhem in Israel preceding this through this legal reform of Netanyahu, which in itself is a terrible mistake in terms of timing, the way he presented it, and all that comes with it. Another reason. But they say, and we have to listen to them for God's sake, we started to prepare it over a year ago, and some of them said even 2 years ago, before this government was established. They really came to the conclusion that they can achieve success. And the reason that they came to that conclusion is a combination of, again, factors. One of them is the overall policy of Netanyahu's governments about Gaza seemed to them to indicate weakness, that Israel is engulfed by hedonism, by the sense of the good life. The economy is number one. We don't want to endanger anything with any conflict, So, we can achieve. And let's face it, and that's not started now. It is a sense that they might have gotten for real. Secondly, is the Iranian factor. Iran is much more invested in Gaza than what people think and know. In money, in all kinds of resources, in the education system. There is even a movement in Gaza among Sunni Muslims to convert to Shia Islam, to associate themselves completely with Iran, which is a Shia state. And the Iranians have an interest. It's obvious what it is. Then, of course, there might be other reasons as to the specific timing now. And I'll surprise you with one of my theories. And I say it's a theory. Some of you may say speculative. Fine. They knew about the music festival. They knew. They knew the music festival would give them the opportunity to kill as many people as possible. They knew that. Leave it at that. I don't know. About the situation right now. To start with, and I need to say to you with honesty, look, I worked with Prime Minister Shamir, who was not a pussycat, was not a spring chicken. He was a tough guy. I worked with the Defense Minister, Arens, who again was a tough guy. They never talked in the language that some people talk today. We'll destroy them completely. We'll do this, we'll do that. What does it mean to destroy them completely? There are two elements of destruction here. One of them is the military destruction. Another one is ideological destruction. Ideological destruction you can't achieve. That's their ideology. Military destruction can happen only if you get into the last stronghold of Hamas in Gaza and kill the last fighters of Hamas. We cannot do that. You know why? Because the world will not like to see 5,000 to 10,000 bodies in the streets of Gaza. The world doesn't care about thousands of Israeli bodies or Jewish bodies. And I refer you to the famous book of Dara Horn that's published a year or 2 years ago, The World Loves Dead Jews. Read this book, it's interesting. Now, Netanyahu can say whatever he wants and others. International pressures already are in place this moment as I talk to you. The visit of Biden is all about that. I give you diplomatic support. I give you a visit. I give you nice photo ops. Let's be honest about that. You give me your effort to prevent a full-scale war in the Middle East because I don't want it. All these American troops coming to the Middle East now are there in order to deter a war. And you will not see American boots on the ground. You might see them on the ships in the sea, but not on the ground. So the question really is what Israel is not capable of doing. It's capable, but Israel, militarily, it's capable, but what is Israel capable of doing politically? And I will leave you with my skepticism. I just don't see it happening. In the last 48 hours, the volume of military activity has receded. That's a fact. Because the Israelis don't want to see something happening while Biden is around, and that's what the Americans told them. Now, today, something happened, with the hospital. If you look at the picture, there is no doubt that it was a missile fired by them. There's no question. You see the pictures, you can't even come to any other conclusion. But the IDF reacted slowly. Netanyahu reacted slowly. Everybody already believes Israel did it. I'm afraid to wake up tomorrow morning to the media of tomorrow morning. It will be a mayhem against Israel that you can't imagine. So militarily speaking, what is happening now is definitely Israel has much better abilities and so on and so forth, but I say still, I might be wrong, okay? I do not see the end of it in line with the big statements about complete destruction of Hamas. I wish it was, but don't make it be wrong. It should be. I doubt it. Go to the north. The same mistake that we did about Hamas, we did about Hezbollah. The war of 2006 ended when Nasser Allah said, if I knew how it would end this war, I would not have started it. So for 17 years, there was deterrence there. That's true. But something else happened. We allowed them to arm themselves. We did not stop it. And therefore, and we have to say it, therefore, see what is happening. If the idea was, let's not go after Gaza in full force as I described, because we don't want to waste resources about what would happen with the North, we have now a war in the South and maybe also in the North. It's a complete reversal of the expectations. But that's what happens. We need to understand it. How is going to end? Let's have two scenarios here. That will be my last comment. One scenario is, I'm totally wrong. The IDF gets into Gaza. There will be casualties. By the way, the spirit of the Israeli soldiers and society is so impressive. It's exciting. Yeah, I need to tell you a story about it. You need to hear it. You need to hear it. A battalion commander, lieutenant colonel, in his civilian life is a principal of high school. He monitors his battalion. Everybody showed up. One person was missing. He needed another driver for armored carrier. He didn't have. You know what he did? He published on WhatsApp, I need a volunteer to be a armored carrier driver. 70 Israelis volunteered. Yeah. So the scenario that I'm trying to say now is, I'm wrong. There will be a ground invasion after the pounding from the air really weakens them, and it does. There are indications it does. And we destroy Hamas. Okay. So then what? Who would take Gaza? The Egyptians don't want it. Saddam did not want it. Nobody else would want it. They know what's going on over there. It's an hornet's nest. They don't want it. Israel doesn't want it. Who wants to control this area? Who has the $100 billion that we shall need to have to rebuild it? It's terrible, I mean, you know. The only one that can take it will be the PA, Abbas. So the entire strategy to split between Hamas and the PLO fails. That's one scenario. Second scenario is Biden comes, a dynamic is created of reduced Israeli military activity. Macron wants to come. Who knows who else will come? There is a dynamic towards kind of moderating the situation. Few more days of pounding them from the air. 1,000 more casualties on the other side, 2,000, who knows, I mean, you know, and then ceasefire. We beat them hardly, beat them strongly, we defeated them, we took our revenge, and enough is enough. Which means what? Another round in 2, 3, 4 years. In between these scenarios, there may be all kinds of other variations, but that's more or less the two big scenarios. Then, of course, Israel will have a commission of inquiry. Political ads will roll on. There will be a new government, maybe new elections. I would argue to you it will be the third Israeli republic. The first one was 48. Then the second one was the aftermath of the Yom Kippur War, when Likud rose, the right wing rose, the Mizrahim, the religious people, The third Israeli Republic will be now because the wound in Israel is very, very deep. The motivation just shows to you what will happen afterwards. Now people are motivated, they're patriotic, they're nationalists, they do exactly what we expect people to do. But the anger is unbelievable. The anger is huge. But that will be later, so invite me again to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Yossi. Luis, you have to unmute yourself. You're excellent, Yossi, but you have to unmute yourself. Okay.
I don't like what I say myself. I would like to say we won. Everything is great.
Well, let me ask you a question then.
Yes.
Luis, let me ask this.
Yeah.
Luis, hang on.
Go ahead.
The PA, after Israel pulled out in 2005, the PA was in control, right? So would they object to coming back? I mean, does Abbas
they will not object to come back. They will not object to come back. You will have to fill their pockets with a lot of dollars so that you know where they will go to in the end. And obviously, it will allow them to be finally what they're supposed to be, to total in control of the Palestinian people, if indeed it happens. But then, of course, the pressure would be on Israel to agree to the next step, which is an independent Palestinian state, or at least to accept some kind of Palestinian statehood. But then again, look, all this is iffy, of course. It's one of the scenarios. The PA, of course, whatever you give them, they will take. Why not?
Yeah. So before Luis speaks up, we have Tony Grogan with a question. Tony actually is he won't care if I say this. He's the top executive at Newsmax. So
okay, good. Yeah.
So go ahead, Tony. Oh, you have to unmute yourself. Okay.
That was a very.
Oh, you muted yourself by accident again, Tony. There you go.
That was a very good analysis. Do you see the possibility of a third scenario where Israel uses this opportunity to attack Iran and destroy their nuclear capability?
No. Might be wrong. No. Look, again, I don't want to turn it into Netanyahu bashing session and all that. For 15 years, he talks about doing this, nothing happened. Why would it happen now when Israel is, let's face it, weaker? Look, this war, people don't realize an entire region was destroyed. They talk about drawing money from the foreign currency reserves of the Israel bank, and there are all kinds of situations that, of course, everything can happen. The Iranians can still provoke both Israel and, most importantly, the US in a way that would unleash a strong counterstrike. But that's up to them to do, and I doubt that they will do that. They are enjoying the current situation. Plays off to them. Israel, by all accounts, even if you totally destroy Hamas, is getting bruised, injured, damaged. I mean, let's face it, that's what it is. Look, America doesn't want a war with Iran. That's what. And the current Israeli government is not going to go against America on something which is extremely important to America. That's the way I understand it. I'll say more than that. The basis, and I wrote about it, the basis of the negotiations with Saudi Arabia is very interesting. Because what is the Saudi interest? It will answer your question. You will see the connection. The Saudis really want to move on from total dependence on oil to diversification of their economy, to prepare themselves for the year 2030. For that, they need peace and stability. They need to contain Iran. That's why they renewed diplomatic relations with Iran. But in order to protect them completely, they need also a quite peaceful Israel. A lot of the business that the Saudis are planning should happen very close to the intersection of borders between Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Egypt. So they say to the Americans, look, we'll give you this big gift and to Netanyahu of normalization, but obviously we don't expect that if Israel will be in normalization with us, they will go to a war with Iran, which will undermine our entire strategy here. So if indeed it's going to happen like I described, which may be changing now because of the situation, Israel is losing its freedom of action about Iran.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yossi. Luis, I know you
Well, I
wanted to.
prefer, I really enjoy, I know that a lot of people have many questions.
Yeah.
And so I really prefer, I could ask questions at this point, but I prefer that give right now priority to the audience, particularly because we want to finish it on time. And so the floor belongs to the audience at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you, Luis. I just didn't want to shut you down. So, questions? Okay, Irving, you're up. Dr. Berkowitz.
Yes, Yossi, thank you again for a very insightful presentation. Yossi, something that I know I have communicated with you about personally is the fact that Israel has continues to lose the propaganda war. And I'm wondering, is it too late for Israel to regain ground, especially now with media just demonizing Israel and affecting a dramatic change in public opinion in just a matter of days, given the world's sympathetic reaction to Israel for the Hamas attack, and now almost predictably, everyone is vilifying Israel. Can you just address, you were a man of the press, why is Israel so weak in communicating its message, and what do you think can be done at this point?
Like what happened to them with the hospital. When that happened, they immediately said Israel. What was the reaction of the IDF spokesman? We are checking. Now, if you know what happens in the media, they look for the specific headline at the moment that will be attractive enough. We are checking is not. Israel is to blame for is. And then after 4 hours, the Israelis say we have intelligence showing whatever. You have intelligence, show it. Show it. Sacrifice intelligence because this is a potential disaster. But these are the technical problems. There are two fundamental issues. Part of it has to do with the Israeli sense of we are doers, we are not talkers. So yeah, we like to talk, but we are doers, All this business of PR and all that is relatively new in Israel. It's not like, Madison Avenue is an American invention, or it came to Israel late, but it's part of the Israeli mentality, we are doing, nothing ever being planned PR-wise before any big operation. It's not part of the sense, that's mentality. But there's something else. Look, we do not have a real system of PR or Asbara. We have people who do it, but not a system, not a methodology of it, not an organization of it. And under Netanyahu, it's become like his appearances, his speeches in the UN and all that. Who else can do it in the government? Who else can do it in the government? So no system was built. That's part of the legacy of Netanyahu. That will be for another time, for another discussion. When I was in the government press office, I had all kinds of conditions before I agreed to take this job. I had academic position, you know. I just came back from Cornell in sabbatical, and, you know, life was supposed to be good. One of them was that we need to create a system, an organization. And it was so difficult. It was so difficult. So they hired the PR agencies in all kinds of places and all that, and they gave us all these gimmicks, you know, that you do in Fifth Avenue and so on and so forth. That's not what happens. It has to be on every level. I'll tell you something about Florida now, okay? If there was a real good system, there should have been in every big Jewish community an emergency team of 3 to 5 spokespeople that will immediately jump into work when something happens. They will be the first to call the local TV station, the local radio station, the local newspaper, and say, here is what we think. What's the big deal? For example, there's something very simple. The Arabs, they have it. The BDS movement has become now the infrastructure for Arab propaganda all over America. In every place you have BDS people. You know, if they even came to our university, we already have 2 professors who are BDSers. And what I'm trying to tell you is just bits and pieces, you know. The picture really is bigger than that. I'll just give you an example or examples. And I'm telling you what happened today with the story of the hospital is typical. As I heard it, I say immediately to Diana, my wife, Diana, it's a disaster. Because I know what will happen. She asked me what? I said nothing. The Israelis will giggle. And that's what happened. Though I need to tell you, the NBC News with Lester Holt is in Israel now were not as bad as I expected it to be. But CNN, the headline is Israel. That's it. They already know. And the condemnation, Justin Trudeau, the EU, everybody. The Americans are saying, by the way, we are checking intelligence. Well, they're keeping their, you know, we'll see what they will say. We'll see what Biden will say tomorrow when he lands. I don't know. It could become self-defeating to us. We'll see. Well, I know it's a partial answer. It's not a full one.
It was a very good answer.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any questions? I don't see any hands up. Luis, if there are no hands up.
Well, if no hands up, I'll ask my question.
Yes.
Yossi, you talk about the issue of credibility, and you talk about when you work for Shamir and Arens, nobody made all these threats. I already heard Netanyahu in 3 speeches threatening we are going to wipe out Hamas. We heard the commander-in-chief of the armed forces in Israel, of the IDF, repeating the same thing. And meanwhile, you are saying now that the army is receding, right? That is not.
I didn't say that. I said that the volume of military activity has receded in the last 48 hours. I didn't say anything beyond that, but I suspect, what do I know? Okay. I suspect that there is preparation for the visit, and the visit might create a new dynamic. But again,
now, how much time do you think all these threats, we are going to do that, and then we are announcing, that means Israel is announcing what it's going to do, and how much time, I mean, aren't they giving an advantage to Hamas to develop all kinds of strategies to prevent their destruction? Or, you know, I mean, this is, I mean, what bothers me in all this sense is that if you are basically saying that you are going to come down to, you know, to crush Hamas, and then you do nothing, you totally lose your deterrence.
well, look,
and it seems to me that I don't know who makes the decisions there, but I have the feeling that the decisions are between 1 or 2 people there. Is there any logic to all this?
Look, first of all, we need to define words like, say, ground invasion. There might be, there already are ground operations, by the way, small elite units here or there looking for bodies and maybe 1 or 2 senior Hamas people were killed because of intelligence gathered by, ground units and so on and so forth. And it may be that the ground invasion would be basically limited in order to take controlling areas in some parts of Gaza and to
Like Gaza City, yes.
to remain like a constant threat over them and all that, There could be all kinds of options here, but look, the capabilities of the IDF are almost unlimited. Just imagine if at the same time the cruise missiles from ships, the artillery, the tanks, and the Air Force are acting at the same time for 6-8 hours, not much of Gaza will stay. The problem is political. The problem is political and PR. And I don't want it to, again, as I said, I don't want it to become like Netanyahu bashing, which is so popular to do these days, but he has not proved in the past that he knows how to stand up to pressures when it comes to too many casualties on the other side.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know if it's an answer. Yeah, I'm looking at what's happening and I try to analyze the statements. And then I look at what soldiers, social media and all that, the spirit is just unbelievable. And the change of mind of many people. I don't know if you know the name of Yuval Noah Harari, this famous philosopher, how he speaks now as opposed to 2 weeks ago. Generals that were main figures in the left-wing officers or whatever, now they talk about God knows what. I mean, the spirits are there. But look, I think it's logical to say while Biden is around, there won't be anything big. And think about what happens when Biden leaves. If then Israel does something big, the Americans will be suspected of encouraging it. I don't think that they are saying to the Israelis, do that after we leave. I'm maybe too pessimistic, maybe, I don't know. As they say, I'm skeptical. I'm not sure. But, from the beginning, by the way, I said also to my wife, to others, I'm not sure about ground invasion and how big it will be and all that. But you know what? Last night, they published a poll in Israel, 87% say go for ground invasion, already knowing that Biden is coming. So the public opinion is there. What Netanyahu has in mind about will happen depends also on what he thinks will happen after the war in terms of his political future. He's a politician, and people in politics think along those lines. I mean, it's one of their considerations, not maybe the only one, but one of them.
Yossi, we have some
Probably
other
doesn't have
questions.
much of a political future. Tony Grogan, I think he's raising his hand again, I think.
No, he lowered it.
Okay.
Tony and then John.
I'm here. Yep, please.
Yeah. I think you're right, Professor, about the public relations response. I noticed in California, the Hamas pro people had media people out there that interfaced with any television crews, including ours. So they're getting smarter about not having people on the street crying death to the Jews. So you need to have a similar effort on a network level for Israel. I'm just agreeing with you.
Very, very briefly, I need to tell you that when I talked in California in Irvine University, University of California at Irvine, one time that I talked there, 16 police cars were in temples to protect me. And that was like, what you say is a difference of strategy that they apply, but part of it is that the media is receptive to them. Something else quickly, and then
Then
Mr.
we'll go
Levin.
on to two other questions.
Okay, very, very quickly, and then to Mr. Levin.
No, to John and then Joel. Okay.
All right.
And then
Part
Fred
of the
Lurie
problem
is also asking something.
let me tell you something that will be of interest to you. Part of the problem is with Jewish journalists. And I found out something very interesting. I don't want to mention names. No, I worked with Jewish journalists. They were very critical of Israel. Years later, when they became professor of journalism here or there or whatever, they were the most pro-Israel. I said to somebody, what's going on? What's going on? So he or she said, what do you mean what's going on? Well, I'm an employee of a network. Well, I have to do what they want me. My wife sitting here, Diana, 3 days ago, she heard from the local CBS station in Columbia, South Carolina, our national headquarters forbids us to use the term terrorist about Hamas. She said it in so many words. And she said it with tears in her eyes. Because she is South Carolinian, and South Carolinians are mostly intuitively pro-Israel. He said, what can I do? So the media, look, there are profound situations here. You can, not one of them is, not the least of them is also, let's face it, anti-Semitism. The Jews are singled out. They have to behave different. The only people that are not allowed to win are the Jews. Mr. Levine.
Yeah, no. First, John, his hand was up.
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry.
Joel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, Joseph, what I noticed the other day in the news that the head of Hamas, the ultimate big boss of Hamas, was in Qatar.
Yeah, he's in Qatar, yeah.
And he was smiling and joking with the leaders of Qatar. What do you feel the role of Qatar will be
Very bad
in the future?
Al Jazeera, which is a Qatar propaganda station, is inciting and inflaming, and they still have an office in Jerusalem. That's how crazy the Israelis are. They have an office in Jerusalem. They give money. They are in good terms with the Iranians. They are. And Khaled Mashal and the other gangster, Ismail Haniyeh, members of their family were treated in Israeli hospitals. However, a few hours ago, the entire family of Haniyeh, which is the number 2 in Hamas, was wiped out in Gaza, although he is not there. And of course, people will say, why do you do it for the family and all that? That's another story.
Sorry,
But for
Yossi,
members,
sorry. The Haniyeh's family was wiped out?
Haniyeh's family in Gaza was wiped out, yeah.
That means wife and kids?
As I said, everybody. I don't know the exact.
He has 13 children.
I don't know how
No.
many of the children. The entire family in the house of the Haniyeh family was wiped out. He
I
is
didn't
alive.
know
He's
that.
in
Thank
Qatar.
you.
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
Mr. Levine, yeah.
Yes.
I enjoyed your talk, because I've always enjoyed listening to you. But I have a real concern as a liberal rather than a sort of political conservative. And what I think is Israel has lost.
Everyone is welcome here, Joel.
Thank you. I think Israel has lost a lot of the liberal heart, and it has done it in ways that are not just PR. I mean, I agree that the PR may be miserable, and Netanyahu must be the worst PR person that ever led a country. But the settlements have been, I mean, you go back to the first George Bush, at least, the settlements have been a problem, and there's no end to them, and they don't seem justifiable under any number of theories. They seem wrong to a lot of people. The religious orthodoxy seems wrong to people like me who are Reformed Jews. A congregation that I knew well because my cousins went there in Pittsburgh was the site of the killing. And the chief rabbi in Israel, and it's a big point in the United States, refused to call it a synagogue. He called it a Jewish club or something. And he again and again refused to call it a synagogue. And my children from my first wife who converted to Reform are not welcome in Israel. And LL can't fly because of orthodoxy. And meanwhile, the Orthodox Jews don't work.
don't contribute to the economy, and are unceasingly anti-Muslim, probably anti-Christian if they only had a chance. And the last thing is that the Israeli government, when they've gone after people, they destroy, if there's a wrongdoer, they destroy the house, they may kill the family, they take the land. As someone who has done civil rights law now since 1976, that is completely illegal under international law. And if Israel wants, I mean, Netanyahu has made it clear in speech after speech, he doesn't care about people like me on 20 different grounds. He doesn't care about one of my longest and oldest, sort of longest time and oldest friends, Chaim Gantz, keeps writing books in Israel. You might not know him. He's an Israeli professor. And it keeps saying the same thing I said. He says it more elegantly. And so I think it's easy to be paranoid if you're a Jew. I am a paranoid Jew. But there's a lot of sin to go around. And I don't see the Israelis having any concern with curing their own house. So I think they will lose the generation of my kids. And when they do, at some point, liberal governments in UK, Canada, and America who come to power will say no. And that will be a big problem.
Joel, thank you for that. I know we're running against the hour.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you for that statement.
Let me, I need to.
Then we have one more question, Yossi, afterwards.
No, can I just few points here very quickly, Mr. Levin? First of all, no Jew in Gaza, no Jewish settlement in Gaza. Settlements were not a problem with Hamas. That's a fact of life. Not even one Jew is in Gaza. They did what they did. So it's not about territory in the case of Gaza. It's not about all this. It's about Jews that are not allowed to have their own homeland, and that's a fact of life. I mean, you can't deny it. Altogether, settlements is a problem, of course, but it is not a problem with AOC or these people. Just listen to what they say. They don't say it. They say this, but that's not the main point. But look, few other points here. First of all, yes, the young generation is shying away. I understand it. Though I don't see it in my campus now. We established this pro-Israel group in South Carolina, and Jews, the young Jews are flocking in, but that's because of the current situation. Maybe we'll see. Maybe part of the answer here is beyond the fact that Israel may not look as liberal as it should be to these people. I'll come to that in a minute. It's also the fact that third or fourth generation of young Americans are shying away from their ethnic origins in every community. Because I have students in my classes, Polish Americans, Irish Americans, Lebanese Americans, whatever. And almost all of them always say that their connection to their home country, the old country, if at all, Greek Americans and so on and so forth. So maybe we have to admit that also Jews are becoming more American because that's the melting pot of America. But now let me tell you something else. What does it mean, less or more liberal or more or less religious? 50%. And Joel, I heard some bad stuff from you. You hear some bad stuff from me now. 50% of Jews in Israel are Mizrahim. Do you know them? Do you know them? You don't. Do American Jews know them? No. But what do you want us to do with them? They all vote right wing. You know why? They're more traditional, more conservative, they're more nationalist, they come from Arab countries. They have a different notion of living with Arabs than what you or other people have. And let me tell you something. Some of the stuff that I hear about Mizrahim in Israel is racist, ugly. And you know what? It started in America in the 19th century already, the way of Juden were accepted by the Reform movement. There is a problem here. Let's debate it. Let's discuss it. Let's dialogue it. But you know what the problem is? When you say what you say, I will go along with a lot of what you say. I'll come back to the marriage and all this, in a minute. But American Jews don't like to hear my answer. They don't like to hear. The contempt that I hear about the Likud voters is unbelievable. the entire periphery of Israel votes right wing. You go out from Tel Aviv, Ramat HaSharon, Ra'anana, that's another land. These are people. They have a different culture. Joel, let's be honest about it. Not you, okay? American Jews, mostly the liberals, do not like these people. The Likud party, which I'm not a member of anymore, that's not my party with Netanyahu. It's the party of the working class, the darker skinned people, all these groups that in America would have been the babies of the progressive movement. They don't like them in Israel because they have different politics about the territories and Palestinian issue and all that. So let's be honest about it. We have to have a dialogue. We have to discuss it, but in open mind. Let me tell you something else.
And then we have to have one more question after that. And then we're.
All right, very quickly.
Forget
Okay, so we have more to point here to what Joel said, but I'll tell you only one point. I get Jewish students in my classes, or at least I think they are Jews, with Jewish names. Then I ask them, are you? They tell me, but professor, we are not Jews. Because my mother is not Jewish and we grew up as Catholics or as whatever. With names like Feinberg, Schneider, Levin. I was surprised. Kaplan and all the rest of it. Can we talk honestly, openly about mixed marriages? Can we or not? Joel, look at me. Can we or not? It's a problem. Any dismissive attitude towards reforms and conservatives, I reject wholeheartedly. I don't agree with it. I totally reject it. But let's talk honestly and openly about the problems. Let's be honest about it. I cannot come to a discussion like that with American Jews. And I've been in America on and off since 1982. Everywhere that you can think of. I cannot come. People don't like to hear it. You know. So you raise good points, painful points, strong points, but the answers are a little bit more complicated. And they require a real dialogue here. We leave it at that.
Okay, thank you
For the
for
time
that.
being.
Fred Lurie wrote a question some time ago. What about the hostages?
Joe or
I don't know.
Astros.
What?
Sorry, yeah.
Lady sitting next to me had a beautiful.
What about the
About
hostages?
hostages? It's a moral dilemma. What are you doing? I don't know. Definitely any activity of the IDF puts life in danger.
And,
So we gave over 1,000 terrorists back for Gilad Shalit. So what happened?
right.
Hamas changed? No. I don't know what to
That-
tell you. That's moral question.
Yossi, do you think that at this point the Israeli intelligence is trying to locate the hostages?
They're trying to do all kinds of things, you know, and probably they do it well after the big failure. Fortunate as I described it. You don't talk here about an Entebbe type of operation. It's the numbers and all this is totally different, you know, and we have to bear it in mind. Look, my mid daughter, I have 3, Ayala, her name, the family of her best friend's sister is the 5 members family that was buried today. And you know how they found them? They were hugging each other dead in the shelter. They were executed. And they gave them the right to hug each other. And Ayala is left of me in terms of her politics. And I talk to them all the time. I mean, you know, with my daughters. She is totally in favor of ground invasion. She says, look, I mean, there's no choice. And she was in the funeral today of this family, you know. That's a question that, don't ask me. But my opinion here is not important at all. It's like any other one. What do I know? I mean, it's a moral question.
Let's go, John, if you can ask a quick, because we want to be
All right,
kind
it's
to the
not
time.
John, it's David Dean.
Oh, David Dean, okay.
You made a statement that the children, our children, are not pro-Israel.
I
My
didn't say that. I
children
said they
are
are shying
leaving.
away. No, I said shying away from Israel. That's what I said.
Okay, my children, my grandchildren are packing and are leaving
Yeah,
to go
sure.
volunteer in
Oh, yeah.
Israel now.
Yes. Oh, yeah, good.
My daughter
Great.
has moved there.
Great, fantastic. But the Jewish Bar Association of NYU and Harvard issued statement in favor of Hamas. So I'm not comparing. All I'm saying is there is a problem, and Joel was right about it. And of course, congratulate your children, grandchildren. Obviously, we love them, we admire them. But we need to say the truth here. All the research, all the polls, all the data that we have, and I teach young Jews. Look, I teach them. There is a difference here between this generation and others, but it is not a uniquely Jewish problem. That's what I said as well. It's an American problem. The American melting pot draws to itself, young people. And they think American rather than Irish or Italian or Lebanese or Jewish. And so I'm trying to put it in a context, in a perspective that will sound more realistic. But I congratulate your family, of course. What can I always salute them? And many people, by the way, today I read something very interesting. It's the first time in a war that more people coming to the war rather than those who leave the country during war. So look at it also from that perspective. So don't take my comments by any way as being critical, God forbid, of any particular young American Jew. I think in general terms about the problem. I think Stephen, I see another Carol Luberman. Yep, I don't know.
One more. Well, this will be the last one. And
I'm here. It's my home.
I want to be kind to you and everyone else. Go ahead, Carol.
I have a question for Yossi.
Yeah.
So when I grew up, my grandparents were Hasidim. I don't know what they're called in Israel, but my father had a really difficult time with them. And is it because they didn't assimilate into American culture that wrath of dislike comes about?
I don't know about any particular family, but it's just what I said before about first generation, second generation, third, fourth. I mean, look, there is a phenomenon in America altogether. As people get away from their roots in terms of time and all that, they get away from their cultural roots as well. I mean, and we are not unique in that sense. And I say maybe it puts our condition in that case in a more realistic way. But look, the fact of the matter is, and I don't see Joel here, I don't know, he's still there, yeah. The fact of the matter is that the reform movement of America in the late 19th century did not like ultra-Orthodox Jews. There was a committee established in New York to mend the fences of the Ostjuden, to adapt them to American culture. That's a fact. That's a true historic fact. So we have had these problems throughout the history of American Jews, Americanization on the one hand, as opposed to maintaining Jewish seclusion and so on and so forth. And let's face it, the ones who maintain seclusion within American society are the ultra-Orthodox. By the way, Joel, you said all the Orthodox. Come on, I mean, 40% of Israel are Orthodox and semi-Orthodox. You're talking about part of a part of a part. But okay, just...
Olivia, Yossi, I just wanted to say, related to that, there's a very famous Reform synagogue in Atlanta called The Temple. And Melissa Fay Green wrote a book about it, the bombing with Martin Luther King and so on and so forth. They, up until the late 1950s, they used to hold Shabbos services on Sunday, so they would fit in with the community.
Yeah. I know, but look, there is a synagogue in Chicago. The rabbi, I think, is called Rosen or something, a Jewish name. They, in a poll that they conducted, decided to define themselves officially as anti-Zionist synagogue. So, Joel, it's not about synagogue in Israel. It's something deeper. Just last point here. Natalie Portman. We like her. She studied in the high school with one of the daughters of my wife, Long Island. Natalie Portman, a few years ago, and I wrote about it, She said, the attitude to animals in America is comparable to the Holocaust. Joel, that is a stampede from Judaism. It's nothing to do with anything you said. I don't want to be part of that. If I compare the attitude to animals in America to the Holocaust, it's something else. And Mark Zuckerberg, you can't say a bad word about LGBTQ community on Meta, but about Jews, Holocaust denial, it's not about settlements. Joel, a lot about settlement, not that. Let's be honest about this. There are problems. Did you hear about the movement called JVP, Jewish Voice for Peace? If not now, this group, they demonstrated against Chuck Schumer on Saturday in his own because he's pro-Israel. After they heard about what happened. Maybe, just maybe, some of those youngsters want to get totally American and not to be pinpointed all the time. They're Jews, they're Jews, they're Jews. They support Israel and see what troubles the Israelis bring upon us. I mean, there could be all kinds of explanations here. We need to talk about it. We need to discuss it.
Well, we can go on forever. We'll have to have you back for a series. I know I see some people have dropped off, so it is getting late. And I just want to say thank you, Yossi. This couldn't have gone better. The education, the information. I remember the good old days when I lived near Ashkelon. We used to take a bus into Gaza, Lishtot Mashuv, and we'd play Sheshbesh in Gaza in 74 and 75 after the war. I think those days are gone forever, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate always the opportunity to talk to these people that are invited by a center that I'm part of.
And so again, thank you. We thank everyone for coming and the questions. And it's been a very sad couple weeks now since the 7th, and we're all still dealing with it and talking about it. So I thank you, Yossi, for putting a lot of this in perspective. Again, it couldn't have been better. And with that, I did post our link for our donation page on our website. Please check out our website. Read articles by Josef Olmert on our website, on the Palm Beach.
I think over 20 of them already, no?
Yeah, you're a prolific writer for us. And they're all terrific. And again, have a wonderful evening. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Take care. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you very, very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yossi.
You too. Thank you. Shalom. Am
Shalom.
Israel Chai. Don't ever forget it.
Betach,
Take care.
absolutely.
Bye.